welcome back, and we're going to talk about some more stuff, AIP, Hashimoto's, autoimmune thyroiditis stuff today. And I guess one thing that I've been thinking about is the name of Hashimoto's itself. Is it weird to anyone that Hashimoto's is kind of a weird name? I mean, no offense to Dr. Hashimoto, the guy who discovered the disease in Japan 100 years ago. But a lot of other, and I mean, it's great that we're using his name, but it's kind of weird that we don't use like the technical name, which is like autoimmune thyroiditis, because autoimmune thyroiditis is like way more descriptive than Hashimoto's, and Hashimoto's just kind of sounds like mysterious and like rare and like, ooh, I have Hashimoto's, when really like in developed countries like United States, and in the United States about 1 in 5 women have Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroiditis. So like 1 in 5 women have this autoimmune condition. And so why do we give it this really mystical, rare name when it's really like a very common disease? And so I think that's one thing that might be helpful in the Hashimoto's healing space, is like changing how we talk about the disease, and maybe calling it, like what it is, autoimmune thyroiditis, or even like, we call multiple sclerosis, MS. Why don't we call autoimmune thyroiditis like AT? Like saying like, oh, I have AT, like sounds way better than I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You know what I mean? Anybody agree out there? Yeah, so yeah, I think that's one thing that like I kind of want to see if anyone is, interested in pursuing that sort of keywords, if you will, because yeah, lots of people just feel like isolated and alone and having this disease, when really it's like super common. Like you can throw a stone and hit lots of people with this disease. But yeah, one thing that's kind of disappointing, and I don't mean to like wear a tin hat or anything, but just the way that thyroiditis is, I'll call it AT, is, diagnosed and treated and all these things. It's kind of just like very ambiguous and like under lock and key, and like doctors are like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, even if we know that you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis or AT. So like generally, like the TPO antibodies indicate that you have autoimmune thyroiditis. And if 1 in 5 women have them, like why aren't we like scanning for those in like, yearly checkups? Like we do blood tests to scan for like diabetes and stuff like that. And diabetes is also like an endocrine system. But diabetes is actually less common than Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or it's less common than AT. So yeah, it's just not really like screened for or diagnosed, and so nobody really knows exactly how common it is. And it has this like weirdo name that makes people feel isolated and like they're the only ones with the disease, or maybe that they're crazy for having all these symptoms, or that they're complaining like, oh, I'm bloated, or oh, I have brain fog. It's like, don't complain about that. Like, you just sound silly for having that, or like those are women's problems. But lots of people have them for a reason, because lots of people, 1 in 5 people, have an autoimmune condition, or 1 in 5 women. So that's another issue, is because it is a women's disease, and we do know from science that doctors systematically ignore women's pain over men's pain. So, since AT, autoimmune thyroiditis, is a women's disease, then it stands to reason that it doesn't get the attention that other diseases like diabetes, like similar diabetes, get, because about half or more than half of people with diabetes are men. So that's kind of my rant on that topic. So yeah, I think like if we can start calling it AT, that would be kind of cool. But yeah, does anyone out there like kind of felt alone in having Hashimoto's or AT? I know I have, just like saying, oh, I have Hashimoto's is kind of embarrassing in the first place. It's like, what's Hashimoto's? Or like, Okay, you're trying to be attention seeking because that sounds like a very fancy name and nobody really cares. It's like, oh, you're just trying to get attention, which is also a complaint about women in general, by men who are biased or whatever, excuse me. But yeah, so I think that just like the disease in general, it kind of just lends to people being isolated and feeling like they're crazy, or feeling like whatever symptoms they're having like aren't legitimate, because it's kind of the whole way that it's named, the whole way that the medical system is designed, the way that the symptoms that we have, and the way that women's pain and women's symptoms are treated and viewed by society. Like, it all just kind of lends to like being like silencing people about having the disease, and they don't want to speak up about it. And of course, as women, we don't want to like speak up or like say something's wrong, so we just kind of like keep it inside, and we don't realize that we're not, like, even though we feel isolated, that 20% of women in the United States, or 1 in 5 women, have the disease. And like, what would happen if we all got together and said, hello, we're not feeling that great, and hello, 1 in 5 of us have an autoimmune disease, and hello, maybe we should work on some treatments for autoimmune disease instead of just treating the symptoms of it. Like, why are we creating, well, first of all, the #1 drug in America is levothyroxine, or thyroid replacement. So I'm not sure there's a lot of motivation to change the way that thyroid's treated right now. But why do we create like migraine medicine and infertility medicine and all these different types of medicines to treat the symptoms, when really we should be like at least acknowledging the fact that they are autoimmune in nature? Like, it's an autoimmune disease that's contributing to all these different diseases. But just even like if you go on the American Thyroid Association website, you'll see that it says that 95, 99% of thyroid disease is autoimmune, but the rest of their website has nothing to do with autoimmunity or immunity. It's all, thyroid replacement. It's all thyroid cancer, what to do after you take your thyroid out, take levothyroxine. So really, like, it's just the way that we talk about it and treat it is like just kind of off base. So yeah, and just like having an autoimmune disease just sounds super rare in the first place. So like, nobody wants to speak up about having an autoimmune disease because that just sounds like, oh, you're sick or something like that. But when really lots of people are having that inflammation and stuff like that. So I think it's time that we all speak up and say, hey, this is a normal thing. And lots of people are. Like, there's tons of resources out there, obviously, where people are, speaking up and like changing the way that they're getting their treatment. Like actually proactively seeking options that are going to help them, instead of doctors telling them, like my doctor told me, there's nothing we can do for you. We're going to let your thyroid, wait until your body destroys your thyroid, and then we'll give you thyroid replacement. And that doesn't really sound like an adequate treatment to me. If we, like constantly researching how to like cure other autoimmune diseases like MS or lupus or all these things, like why aren't we constantly researching Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroiditis? Like, that doesn't really make sense why all the other autoimmune diseases, common autoimmune diseases, less common than Hashimoto's, get research, but Hashimoto's kind of, gets ignored and doesn't even get acknowledged as, and thyroid disease doesn't get acknowledged as with the autoimmune basis. Anyways, thank you all. That has been my thought for today, the Hashimoto's Hangout, and thank you for joining. Goodbye.